Okay, so that's how the course setup's going to be. So turning now to, there's course modality explained here. I've pretty much gone over that now. We're having our mandatory first class meeting right now. So what are the other things to point out about this class? Well, again, this class is called Philosophy 405, How to Do Things with Words. So this is an upper level philosophy class. It's also a linguistics class. I noticed that all of you are signed up for the philosophy version of this class right now. It's also cross-listed as Ling 405. And if you're a linguistics major, you may want to change your registration to that. I don't think it's a big deal. I think either will count for either a philosophy or linguistics major. But there just is this other additional listing. I should have actually put it on this syllabus, but it's not on there. So it's Phil or Ling 405. The name of this class is How to Do Things with Words, which is a name that I shamelessly stole from the author John Austin, who is a philosopher who lived into the mid-50s. And we're going to read a little bit of his work, but that's only a small portion of what we're going to read in here. I just think it's a really catchy title. What this class is really about is linguistic pragmatics, and I'll say more about what that is in just a minute. My name again is Mark Phelan. My office, if ever we have the occasion to meet there, is Main 414. And you've got my email on here. As I mentioned, the time of this class is to be determined. I've determined these office hours now. I'm going to put something on Thursday. So there will be some point at which there will be some office hours on Thursday, but I need to think about how the classes are scheduled first before I can schedule that in. So Monday 10 to 12, Thursday at some point, and then also by appointment at any other time. Okay, so what is this class about? It's about, again, linguistic pragmatics. So what is that? Well, first of all, we can start by thinking about what is linguistics. And linguistics is just the study of language, right? And so this field of linguistics has been influentially divided into at least three sub-areas. Not everyone embraces this division, but this was an early foundational division of thinking about linguistics. So the area was divided into these three areas: syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. So what are these three things? Well, roughly speaking, syntax is the study of the grammatical form of sentences, right? So we would be thinking about how do the different words, the different parts of speech fit together? What are the rules that allow them to combine with one another to generate meaningful sentences? And of course, those rules might vary from language to language, but syntax is the study of that. Semantics was the study basically of sentence meanings, or at least this is one influential way to construe it. So it's fundamentally concerned with meanings, but specifically the meanings of sentences. So once you take those basic semantic elements, words, right, morphemes, and you combine them together using the rules of syntax, what are the meanings of the sentences generated in those ways? Right, so semantics was traditionally focused on the meanings of sentences. And then there was this kind of third area, pragmatics. And pragmatics is essentially the study of the use of sentences in conversation and various other social practices. So the subject of this course is linguistic pragmatics, right? In other words, what we're interested in is how we use language to do all the things that we use language to do. And this will include, at sort of the basic and most fundamental level, communicating ideas about the way the world is, but then also using language to actually create obligations in the world, like maybe create new entities in the world, like a marriage. That's something that can be constructed using language, or a contract can be made using language. How do we do that? How do we use language to create those obligations? How do we use language to express our attitudes? How do we use it to amuse, impress, and insult others? Okay, so essentially that's what we're interested in this course. Like, what are the fundamental principles that explain how we use language? And then how can we exploit those principles to explain specific phenomena? So in the first part of this class, we're going to sketch a picture of some of the fundamental pragmatic aspects of a language. So we're going to construct a theory in a way. So in particular, we'll be thinking about the role of several different theoretical entities, and those are utterances, inferences, sentence meanings, and context. So we're going to be thinking about how these things relate to one another. Right? How do utterances relate to sentence meanings? How do these sentence meanings then generate inferences? And how does context function to coordinate all of this stuff? So essentially, we're going to examine these core concepts in the first part of the class before the midterm reading period. Okay, we're going to read some really fundamental foundational works on these questions. And then after we have this picture on the table and after the midterm reading period, we're going to examine the ways in which this picture, in which these fundamental concepts have been used to shed light on several topics within the philosophy of language. Okay, so that's the plan. Are there any questions about that basic kind of setup? Either the notion of pragmatics or the outline for what we're going to do here. Okay. Well, in this class, like most of my classes, all the readings are going to be posted to Moodle, so you'll be able to access it all there. There's no textbook for the course. I've explained the weekly schedule here pretty well, but I leave it to you to go back and look at that to work through maybe some of the details that I didn't express so clearly when I was talking through it. I'm going to turn now to graded assignments. So essentially, your grades in this class are going to be based on a standard 100-point scale, with the following assignments constituting the percent designated. Okay, so the first point is class participation. I think in a way, this is like very important during COVID times that you really attend to, or you really work to attend every class, and also that you participate in each class. I mean, our contact hours are in some sense reduced because of this and because I have to divide you up into these groups. So it is really important that you be there when we have the opportunity to talk, or when you have the opportunity to talk with one another, and that you actually contribute to those things. So this is going to constitute 10% of your participation grade, okay? And essentially you contribute when you show up and you ask relevant questions and make thoughtful comments, okay? So that's what class participation consists in. Another component of your grade in this class will be based on homework and group work assignments, right? So I'll typically give you homework assignments. These will be just graded pass, fail. I read over these and sometimes I'll give spot comments, but I'm not like really going to be responding to each of these in a lot of detail. The point of the homework is to get you thinking about the readings. I'm just going to be making sure that you're doing a good job as you're going along on those, really thinking through the things. You have one homework up already. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. It's on Grice's account of meaning, which is your first reading, your only reading for this week. You'll also have group work assignments each week. And I've sort of been doing some tinkering around with the way that I did these last term in Introduction to Cognitive Science. And but roughly it's going to work in a similar way to the way that this worked for those of you who are in Introduction to Cognitive Science last term. What I'll do is I'll give you several questions to ponder as a group. And then each week, one of you will take the role of writing up your responses to those questions. And you'll all sign off on who contributed to the discussion that week. So that's the kind of group work assignment. So you get more details about that next week when the first group work assignment drops. In this class, you're going to have 4 unannounced reading and discussion quizzes. there's not a whole lot of reading in this class, but it's a 400 level class, and some of the reading is uh, somewhat technical. So I think you do have to spend some time focusing on the reading each week. And also, I mean, coming to class for discussion is critically important, as I've mentioned. So as a way of kind of like reinforcing those ideas, I'm going to give you these 4 quizzes. I'll drop the lowest one of those, and the other 3 will count for 15% of your grade. I'm going to try to, I think there were some thoughts that the way the quiz grade functioned last term in Introduction to Cognitive Science was a little punitive. So I'm going to try to change things up a little bit to make this less punitive than it was last term. So I'll get back to you about how I'm going to make those adjustments specifically, but these quizzes will be announced on Moodle, and then you'll take the quiz in the next few days and earn a grade from that. Additionally, you're going to write 2 papers for this class. So each of these will be worth 20% of your grade, so 40% total here. And these papers will be about 5 pages each, responding to prompts that I distribute in class. They're going to be due on February 14th, so I'm ruining Valentine's for you, and also on March 10th. The prompts will be, again, distributed about 2 weeks before the paper is due. There's more details about the paper here. As I mentioned, about 5 pages. Just use like Times New Roman or Calibri or some other standard font. Don't use Wingdings or something. Make sure the paper is double spaced. Okay, and in a font that a sort of old guy like me can read. So at least 10 point to 12 point, something like that. Okay. Papers are to be submitted electronically through Moodle by 11:59 p.m. on the following dates. Again, that's February 14th and March 10th. And I won't accept late papers unless you clear them with me in advance. So if you do need a little more time, I want you to be attentive to thinking ahead and realizing that you need more time and to asking me for it before you're on the deadline itself, okay? So I think that's an important skill to build. My experience is mostly in life, if you ask for an extension, people will give it to you. But maybe not if you're asking about it 5 minutes before it's due. So just like, know yourself, know if you're going to need the time, and let me know in advance, okay? Final exams in this class are worth, the final exam is going to be worth 20% of your grade, and that'll be a kind of comprehensive online exam building off of quizzes and the material that quizzes pull from. So that's readings, lectures, and handouts. It's going to be open book and available through Moodle for several days, and due at the scheduled end time for final exam period, which is Wednesday, March 17th at 5:30 p.m. So many of you who have taken classes with me in the past, it's kind of a standard thing I've been doing for a few years, even before COVID. So you know the drill. Okay.
Just a quick question about quizzes and exams. Is there a time on them, or can you kind of start, stop, go back into them?
The exam, yeah, there is a time. I have a time limit on both of them. Yeah. But they are open book, especially for the exam. I think it's important not to put you in positions where you're like tempted to do something dishonest or to like look at notes when you shouldn't, especially like right now when we're all like all over the world together, or I mean, all over the world apart. So I do like my exams to be open book, but I think the way what I balance against that is giving you a pretty strict time limit in completing the exam so that you are required to have a pretty comprehensive knowledge of the class going into the exam, even though you can look at your materials. All right. So here are some other class policies, right? I really do think that it's important for us to attend to things as much as possible, given the non-ideal circumstances we're all experiencing. So I'm going to reserve the right to penalize your grade if you miss more than 2 group work or discussion meetings. Essentially, you have 20 of these. during the term. So if you miss more than two, you're missing more than 10% of the class, more than 10% of the class meet times. And I really think that's something you should really try to avoid. So if you do need to go over that, right, I know we're still in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, things can happen. So I'm not like going to necessarily extract points from you if you don't do this. But if you do feel the need, if it does turn out that you have to miss more than 2 days, really be in touch with me. Let's have a discussion about what's going on. Right now, I think all of us, when you're healthy, save those days in case anything does come up and you need to you need to miss some classes later on. Let's just all do our best to be here, okay? Plagiarism, don't do it. Email and Moodle, check them regularly. Special needs, I think kind of one of the most common things I've been seeing is time and a half for exams. Other kinds of issues that might come up. If you need a reader, something like that, just get in touch with me or get in touch with student services and they'll help you with this. Office hours, again, I'm here to help and I strongly encourage you to come by my office hours or to arrange an appointment to discuss any aspect of the course you want. Okay, so I'm going to quickly now go over the reading list for this course. I've divided this up into weekly readings, and I've sort of spaced things out a little bit more than I typically would in a normal term. But I really think this is going to give us time to dig into these readings, which again have a lot of technical aspects to it. So I think this is a reasonable reading list for this term. Essentially, the way the schedule works is, so you have the 10 weeks over there on the left. Also, there's a last row that mentions the due date for the final exam, right? Again, it's a little misleading because I say March 17th, but that's the due date. You're going to have all of the final exam period to take it. For each of the weeks, I give a week number and then the Sunday of that week. And if you look on Moodle, I've divided the class into weeks. The days that start the kind of January 3rd to January 9 or whatever, those should correspond with the week dates that are here. So you should be able to keep track of what's on Moodle, what's on the syllabus pretty easily. For each week, you'll typically have reading assignments. Those readings need to be finished by the time you go to bed on Tuesday. Essentially, typically, although I'm giving you a little extra time this week, your homework will need to be finished then too, and you'll need to submit it by that time. You will have needed to view lectures at that point. Though this week, I'm going to give you a very brief lecture tomorrow to support the reading. I think there's a good set of notes on this reading. You can watch that lecture at your leisure as it's convenient to you. We'll be discussing the reading too on Friday. But typically all of that kind of asymmetric work, the work you're doing on your own time, needs to occur between Saturday and Tuesday of each week, okay? So this means you'll need to get started on the readings over the weekend. Sometimes the reading assignment won't be very long, but will be somewhat technical and will require a lot of careful attention. So be sure to allow yourself plenty of study time each week, okay? So here's the setup. So for week one, we're reading one article. It's not a very long article, but it's written in this kind of mid-century Oxford philosophy style that you may find off-putting or difficult to get your head around at first. So you'll need to give a little bit of time. I think my notes, the handout that I've given for this reading will be very helpful to you here as you're trying to make it through the reading as well. But the first reading is this piece by a very important philosopher of language named Paul Grice. The piece is called Meaning. And so in this article, Grice is offering an account of what it is for someone to communicate something, to mean something by an utterance, okay? We'll talk a little bit more about this later, but this is gonna be a kind of foundational picture of thinking about the role that intention plays in communication. So our intentions are our thoughts or desires to do certain things with our utterances. So we'll be discussing this article this week, Grice's distinction between two different concepts of meaning, and then his theory or his account of how communicated meaning, what he calls non-natural meaning, functions. Okay. So communicative intentions is the discussion for this week. Next week, the topic we're going to be looking at is what's called speech acts. And here we'll be looking at the initial chapters of John Austin's book, How to Do Things with Words, and also an article written by another speech act theorist named John Searle. And this will be offering an account of what it is to do things with words, right? Remember, Austin's book is called How to Do Things with Words. So speech acts are acts of doing things with utterances. Okay, so we're going to talk about what that concept is and some of the theories about it. I've only assigned you the first two chapters of Austin's book. In the past, I've had students read some of the later chapters as well, because his view kind of changes. I've put up a bootleg copy or a link to a bootleg copy of Austin's book that you can access and read more of his theory. I actually think, though, that just buying the book, and I put a link to buy it too, it's not very expensive. I think it's one of the best works of 20th century philosophy. I really think it's a great piece. So you may just purchase that one book if you're interested. I think it's like $12. So that's week 2, speech acts. Week 3, we're going to be talking about another important concept introduced by Paul Grice. And so this is a concept of a conversational implicature. So the basic idea here is someone's meaning something by their utterance other than what the sentence they spoke means itself, right? So for a simple example of this, an example I use a lot, suppose someone pulls up to you as you're walking down College Avenue, or suppose you're walking down College Avenue and you see someone standing beside their car with steam coming out of the front of the car. And they ask, is there a gas station nearby? Okay. Now, presumably in responding to this question, you aren't going to tell them about the gas station that's located around the block that closed down 5 years ago, right? Or you're not going to tell them about a gas station where all of the employees are known to be non-skillful crooks or something like that. That's another block away, right? You're going to tell them about an operational gas station that has good mechanics on hand that can address this car, right? But all they asked for was a gas station. They didn't ask for that more specific thing. So, right, what the sentence itself meant was, is there a gas station nearby? But what it communicated was something more specific than that. Is there a gas station nearby that's open, that has a mechanic on duty, where the mechanic is a conscionable person, will do good work on the car, and so on. So this concept of a conversational implicature is intended to cover that difference between what the sentence itself means and all of these other things that are conveyed by an utterance of a sentence in an instance of communication. It's a very foundational concept for philosophy generally, and so we're going to spend a week talking about that during week 3. During week 4, we're going to dig deeper into something we've been taking for granted as we go along, and that is the concept of a sentence's meaning something. Okay? So as we'll see from Grice's theory and also Austin's theory, both of those rely on sentences having rather determinate meanings. But in week 4, we're going to call that into question. We're going to call into question whether there is something that a sentence says that is deterministic for any particular sentence. And we'll be looking at 2 articles, one by Robin Karsten, one by Emma Borg, investigating this concept and some of the ways in which people have disagreed about whether sentences have specific meanings or not. And then finally, after that, we're going to turn to kind of the last piece of our puzzle here, which is looking in some detail about context. And we're going to talk specifically about a very influential model of context, right? So a context is like the situation in which an utterance occurs. And this philosopher, Robert Stalnaker, who works at MIT, still living, has this very influential account of how context works that's based upon our common beliefs as individuals. So he talks about context as the common ground, the things that we accept in common. And we'll look at his model for how that works, and it'll give a lot of flesh to the theory of communication that we've been developing so far. Week 6, I may give you some very short readings in. I haven't put anything in yet. But basically week 6, we're going to be talking about putting this model together, and it'll be less reading heavy. Okay, so that gets us up to midterm reading period. So what happens after midterm reading period? So after midterm reading period, we're going to use this edifice that we've developed in the first 6 weeks of the term to investigate several specific topics in pragmatics. So first, we're going to talk about the nature of lying and misleading. We're going to look at 2 theories specifically of lying that use various aspects of the machinery that we've developed in the first 6 weeks of the term. Also, if you're interested, I'll probably talk a little bit about this other piece some. I'm also going to give you an optional reading on something that falls short of lying, according to the philosopher who defines it, and that is bullshit. So we can also talk a little bit about bullshit. Harry Frankfurt has this very entertaining reading on bullshit. That's optional, though, not required, during week 7. During week 8, we'll talk about slurs, right? So slurs are words that are intended to denigrate or to hurt particular groups of people. But of course, behind slurs are some sort of linguistic machinery that makes it possible for them to do this. And we're going to look at some theories of how slurs serve to denigrate, how they serve to be harmful to particular groups, okay? So we're gonna spend a week talking about that. We're gonna look at 2 separate theories here on slurs. Then we'll look at some more complex kinds of speech acts as developed in the work of Ray Langton and Rachel McKinney. Ray Langton's article, Speech Acts and Unspeakable Acts, argues that there is an actual pragmatic function to much language, which has the function of silencing particular groups. Her article is particularly concerned with language that has the function of silencing women. And she actually construes pornography as a speech act, and or pornography as a kind of communication, and argues that it has as one of its goals the silencing of women. So we'll talk about that view somewhat. And then we'll turn to discuss this other article by Rachel McKinney called Extracted Speech. She is actually arguing here that language can go further than simply suppressing other people's voices. It can also force them to respond in certain ways. It can also extract speech from individuals, and we'll talk about how it functions in that way. And then finally, during the final week, we'll be looking at metaphor. There's actually supposed to be a separate reading here that I left off. There are going to be 2 readings for this week as well. So one is called Demystifying Metaphor. It's a strategy for literal paraphrase by Megan Stotz. And then the other reading is by Elizabeth Camp, and it's also about, why are metaphors particularly good insults? And so we'll talk about the connection between those 2 things in this last week. I'm sorry I left that off of the syllabus, but I'll add it back in, okay? All right, any questions about the setup of the course so far, or the material that we're going to cover?
I have a general sort of philosophical question about just curiosity about the angle this is being approached from. So when we're talking about stuff like the week on lying, which I'm actually very excited for because my mom has told me about that about Harry Frankfurt before, so I'm interested to read that. But I'm just curious, we're going to be sort of approaching the question of philosophy of lying and bullshit, not from an ethical perspective, but rather like like a linguistic one, like what does a sentence mean if it's a lie, or is it more like why do we lie and when do we lie?
Really, I mean, I think not quite either of those things. So really what we're going to be looking at with the lying pieces is what is it for an utterance to be a lie? Okay, so it's going to be offering an actual account of what it is for someone to lie. Okay, and you may think, well, it's just saying something untruthful. But these philosophers argue, no, that's not enough. It has to be more than that. And they're arguing for particular views of what it is for someone to lie. Okay, so it's not really about the motivation behind it. It's more about how lies function themselves. I think like for each of these topics, in fact, you can think about really what we're interested in is how does this speech act, how does this kind of thing that people do with language, how does that function? Right? So how does a lie function? What does it do? What's its kind of functional profile? How does a slur function? What does it do? Right? So for each of these, I think that's really the kind of question here. How does silencing in language function? Right. All right, any other questions? Okay, so then what I want us to spend a couple of minutes thinking about, and I yammered on too much about that other stuff, but I want you to spend just a moment thinking about this. This is going to be kind of an important question that we're looking at in this class, and I think it's important for us to spend a little time talking about it today. So here's a fact: some strings of marks or noises are meaningful. Okay, I've got two examples down here in the bottom right. The house on the hill was painted green. Right? Seeing those marks on paper, that string of marks, you know that means something. You know what specifically it means, right? Similarly for number two, every superhero movie is 30 minutes too long. Like hearing me express that utterance, it means something to you. It's meaningful to you. Okay. So the question is, why do such strings mean something? So why is it that some strings of noise, some strings of marks, why is it that they mean things? Okay. And I want you to just take 1 minute to think about this and to give your best first approximation or idea. Like I'm not looking for anything like a complete or polished answer to this question. It's probably a complex answer. So you might be pointing to only part of what explains why those things mean those things. But I just want you to take a moment and think and come up with an idea. And then I'll turn it over to, let's get some of these ideas on the board, as it were, okay? Yep, Charles?
So one possibility is just correlation repeatedly. Like if markings or utterances are just come up over and over again in the presence of the same sort of thing, eventually there's going to be a link established. Like even with things with more abstract meanings, like the first thing that actually came to mind when I was thinking about this was, for some reason, the nuclear warning sign, like the sort of triangular thing where it's got the circle in the center and the three like extra bits, and that like you see that on places you know are dangerous. You see that on barrels and things, and the more you see that in dangerous areas, the more you realize there's just a correlation between that symbol and danger, so it comes to mean danger.
Mm-hmm. Right. So like a kid learning a language, their parent, like they may hear people say tree. And every time they hear people say that, there's like trees around, right?
Right.
So those two just become correlated in their experience. So now they hear tree and they think tree. Other ideas, good.
I think the structure of the markings like add some of the meaning as well, because like let's build upon the correlation example. Eventually, when you're good enough at that kind of basic stuff, then you start to be able to like figure out the meanings of words you don't know with context clues. Kind of
Okay,
like you
okay,
learn to do in English class, and then that kind of adds meaning to things.
okay. So I mean, we might characterize these as formal features, features of the form of the utterance, right? Um,
I would say they also have meaning just because we agree they do. Um, like if we didn't all agree that like the nuclear sign meant danger, then it wouldn't mean that. We wouldn't know, and it wouldn't matter.
okay, so things mean the things they mean.
Um, also, to just piggyback off of what Willow said, I was just gonna jump in and say, I think the meaning of the marks and noises are is partially social constructs.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I think how words are continued to be used and maybe agreed upon, such as like houses, you describe the location and color, and then movies, you describe the length and the meaning.
Mm-hmm. So say a little bit more there.
Like I guess like words that belong together, we agree maybe what words belong together, and we use that over and over, and that's how we continue to make that meaning exist.
Oh, good. So it feels sort of, Mario, like you're bringing in the correlation aspect with the kind of social aspect here, right? So it's
Yeah.
not, yeah, it's not only that like I heard the sound tree when there were trees around. It's also like I see people using these things in these different ways. Right. I see what people, what the kind of social features are people agree with these words. Yeah. Good. Other ideas?
Maybe the idea that the constructs like correlate with each other.
Say that again, Alyssa. Sorry.
Maybe the idea that the constructs like correlate with each other depending on the context or the experience a person has.
Well, give me an example.
Like right now, I have the ability to know what is written on the paper on the computer in front of me because I know English. And like English is the construct that allows me to know what this is or contextualize it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. So because I mean, is the basic idea because you know a language?
Yeah, because I have some prior experience, I have the ability to like use that construct from the past in the present.
Okay.
I think that um, I, if I got the question correctly, like, why do words have the meaning that they have? Why do sentences have the meaning that they have? Is because, like, all of it stems from one's imagination and creativity. But then, for it to actually manifest into something real, it has to be converted into practical application. So like you can envision like a tree swinging, but you actually have to see it happen for you to like really give that raw kind of truth and meaning to it, to see it actually happen in the physical dimension.
Good. Good. Yeah, I think I think there is like these two kinds of questions that are sort of rubbing up against each other here. They're slightly different in some way, and I think Hezekiah's comment here really brought this out. There are like two questions we might ask. So we might ask like, why is it that strings are ever capable, strings of sounds or of marks are ever capable of meaning anything? What makes the case that some set of strings can mean something? And then there's this other question, which is, why does this particular string mean the thing it means, right? And those might be different questions from one another, right? I mean, they could have the same answer, but it could be that like we can give a kind of general theory of one of those things that's not always going to be true of the other. Like I guess what I'm thinking is like, imagine like I slam my hand in the door and say, ouch. Or I go, ah, right? Like there's a sense in which maybe that means something, right? But the way in which maybe that means something could be different. Maybe that means a specific thing. Maybe it means Mark's in pain, right? But the way that means that is different from the way in which the utterance, I am in pain, means Mark's in pain, right? The second maybe depends upon the existence of a language, whereas the first doesn't, for example, right? And there might be some more general theory about why those two things have meaning. Okay. So I think explaining why an utterance or why a symbol can have meaning is a very difficult question. That's a question we're going to start with here. Okay. Mari, quickly, we're going to have to wrap up. We're just the end of class, but just quick thought. Yeah.
Oh, yes, sorry about that. I guess I was, as you were talking, I was thinking about how certain jokes, like depending on like how you grew up, what your culture is, your own personal experience, how like certain jokes can have like a meaning in which makes them funny, but then if without that certain experience or like circumstance, the joke might not have any meaning at all. In fact, it might not even be like, you might not even hear the
Right.
part that's funny, or like, that's just kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
About.
That's good. I
that
have
was-
a kind of question, thought of like that on the handout or the homework. So I think that's a good point. Yeah.
Also, may I talk? Would it be possible for me to talk to you after class?
Yes. I think some of you maybe want to stick around after class to talk about registration. I can hang out for a few minutes afterwards.
Thank you.
Just let me wrap up quickly here, though. So why is it that any particular set of strings, any particular physical item is capable of having meaning? So that's kind of a question that we're going to start out being very interested in. It's very difficult to give a theory of this. I mean, we could try to say it's correlated with things in our experience, you know? So when people have said tree in the past, there have been trees around. But of course, that's not going to work for all of the words in our language. Like when people have said is in the past, have there been ises around? When people have said the in the past, have there been thes around? Right? So that's not going to work for everything. I think similarly, we can look at other of these features here. Some of our utterances are one-off utterances. I could make a pun right now. Its meaning isn't necessarily going to be established by our preset agreement that that thing is going to mean that thing. It has a meaning that comes off in the moment, right? This is a very mysterious question. How is it that some particular thing can mean a particular thing? And Paul Grice is trying to give an answer to this question. So your first reading for this week, looking at Paul Grice's article, Meaning, is attempting to give an answer to this question. So here's the article. It's available on Moodle. Pretty short. I have a handout on this that you can also get on Moodle. Importantly, Grice introduces this term of art early in the paper, an utterance. And that's explained here. Additionally, Grice wants to distinguish between these two kinds of meaning, natural meaning and non-natural meaning. His focus is really on non-natural meaning, okay? But I want you to attend to the kind of distinction that he draws between those two things. Non-natural meaning is communicated meaning, okay? The frost on the trees outside, I might say something like, the frost on the trees outside means that it's cold out there. But clearly the frost on the trees doesn't communicate that it's cold out there. So sometimes when we use the word mean, right? We mean this other more sophisticated thing, communicates. And Grice wants to distinguish these two concepts of meaning and then offer an account of what it is for something to communicate something, okay? So that's your assignment. You also have a homework assignment that you need to complete by Wednesday. And I look forward to seeing you all later in the week at some as yet undetermined time, okay? And if you want to stick around and talk for a little bit more, as I mentioned, I can hang out here. I look forward to seeing you all later, though. You can leave now if you'd like.
Hey, Professor Phelan. I just wanted to mention, I was looking on the Moodle. I don't know if it's just mine, but under the handout and homework 1, both downloads are the homework 1.
Oh, it's probably not just yours. Okay, I'll fix that.
Awesome.
That's
Thank
not-
you.
Okay. Yeah, I was doing that last night, so sleep must have gotten the better of me.
No worries. Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
So with our regular homework, with our regular homework assignments, there will be a place to submit that on Moodle because I just didn't see that earlier.
Yeah, that's right. I need to add that too. So that'll be
Okay, cool. That's all I wanted to ask.
okay. And I'm just getting this thing set up right now. Okay, so you should have the appropriate handout up there at this point. All right, other questions?
I can go last. It's more of a private thing.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask about registration because I'm on the wait list.
Yeah, so I think, so right now, okay, so because I'm going to end up dividing this class up, I think there's too many people who are on campus for me to just have one on-campus class.
Okay.
So I'm going to end up having 2 on-campus classes. So it's going to be easier for me to accommodate people who are on campus this term than people who are off campus. I'm already over the class limit for this course, right? So I've already got more students signed up for the class than the limit actually allows. So I think if, I will still allow people if they're on campus because I can fit them in easily. But, if I start adding more people to online, we're already at like about half the class that's online. So it's like 12 people. And it just starts to get sort of unwieldy if we have more and more people added online.
Mhm.
So, yeah. So where are you, Jacob? I guess.
I am on campus.
Okay. So then I think there are 3 people who are signed up on the wait list who are on campus.
Okay.
And I think I can accommodate those people without problem. So I think that'll be okay. The people who are off campus, I just need to see where the numbers sort of end up at the end of this week. Okay. So if you're on campus, just send me an email and let me know that and that you would like to take the class, and I will give you permission to register now. Okay.
Okay, that sounds
Yeah.
fantastic. Thank you. I'll do that immediately.
Yeah, and then I'll talk to the other people who are off campus later in the week about like where things are. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm gonna head out then. Bye-bye. Nice
Yeah.
meeting you all.
Awa, how's it going?
Hi. Good. How are you?
Good. Is it
I'm
Awa?
Awa. Yeah.
Okay, Awa.
Yeah.
Awa.
I was on that first initial list in the at the end, but I'm also waitlisted.
Okay, are you on campus?
No, I'm at home.
Okay, then I think I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to wait and see what the enrollment looks like at the end of the class to see about
Okay.
moving people off of the wait list who aren't on campus.
Okay. Was that initial list that you had when we were introducing each other? That was not your official class list. That was just
That was the people who are both registered for the class and also on the wait list.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
So,
moving forward.
could we talk? Can you email me about a time we can talk in more detail in the next day or two?
Okay. Yeah.
Just tell me your
availability.
availability tomorrow, for example. Tomorrow
Okay.
morning would be ideal for me if you have time then.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Okay. See you then.
Charles, maybe we can do the same thing.
Sorry, I kind of tuned out when other people were
Okay.
talking. I'm just waiting for my turn.
Well, I know you're the other person who's on the wait list who's not on campus.
Yes.
So could we set up a time to just talk tomorrow morning?
I'm gonna be pretty busy most of tomorrow actually because I have a bunch of errands I have to run.
Well, Wednesday would work too. I just want to get it, done earlier in the week if
Yeah.
possible, so you know what your schedule is.
So you don't have time now, or
Well, I
because
mean, yeah.
I have backup plans for if I can't get into this class. So I'm not concerned about like if there's no space, then I'll just drop this and my schedule will be fine.
Okay.
Because actually I've checked out for overloading as well. So if I'm able to take this course, it'll be my 4th. So if I can't, then I'll just have 3. So it's not a problem for me at all to just see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we went back and forth a little bit. I think it's possible. I mean, I know your problems, it's like a little special because you have like this other class that's at the same time.
Right. I have German at the same time and I have to
Right.
be at German. But what I was hoping to do is take this pass fail or SU and just, be in one of the groups for the group discussions, do the readings, maybe meet with you once a week in office hours, just if I have a few questions, and watch the lectures and do the essays. And then
Would you do
assume,
it? I think it might be easier. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So that would work. I mean, I just need to know what the meeting times are like. So I can't really tell you for sure right now.
I just for sure I would not be able to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1:50 to 3 because I have German and I have to be at that. But
Right.
this is also the best time, like in my Lawrence time, for me to take this course, and I'm actually really interested in it because I'm really hoping that the whole angle of like how people like the whole philosophy and linguistics of like what sentences mean could actually be really enlightening and helpful for my future looks into natural language interfaces, because I think I've told you before that I'm into like computer interface and stuff like that. So I'm really interested in this course. And I'm going abroad hopefully next year, so it would be great to be able to do just like the
Well-
readings and the
So I think at least, I mean, I don't know, if there's going to be a time where you can meet with other people or not. So we've got to wait and see how things shake out with that. But if not, I mean, I think we could do like at least a reduced hour kind of thing. You
that
know,
would
like
be
a
great.
kind of reduced credit thing for like three credits or something like that, where you're not producing like as much work, maybe. Yeah. So something we can work something out.
Yeah. All right, great. Thank you.
All right. Bye. Hey, Mari.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Good. So, how was your break?
The break was really nice.
Good. All right.
So, I wasn't planning. It's kind of an awkward situation. I wasn't prepared to really. So there's someone in the